make sure that the clothing you're going to wear and have with you is appropriate for the weather. You make sure all your equipment is ready to go. If you're going to be firing a musket, you have to roll cartridges ahead of time and make all that. Make sure your musket's clean and in working condition. And if you're going to be eating there, you have to prepare to have food, sort of period correct food. You don't bring out, unwrap a Big Mac or anything. You have an apple or something.
It's pork and bacon, sauerkraut, sugar, mushrooms, and we're going to serve it over potatoes.
By technical definition, a reenactor is any person participating in reenactments of historical events. But today, there exist lots of different types of reenacting, some more realistic than others. War reenacting became popular in the US during the 1970s and 80s. History enthusiasts flocked to the hobby for a multitude of reasons. 50 years later, reenactors of all ages are still spending weekends and paychecks on the opportunity to exist in another time period. Traditional camping and cooking skills, as well as accurate clothing and weapons, are necessary to participate. So if it's not the simplest hobby to get into, why reenact?
Now, the meat of this army was not just musketry.
To examine why they do it, we must start with what it is, or what it isn't. Reenacting is very easily mistaken for live-action role-playing, otherwise known as LARPing, due to some of the similarities that are shared between the two. What some may not realize is that LARPing takes place in a fictional setting, while reenactors are recreating history.
I have a bunch of friends that are LARPers, and I don't know of anybody that does a LARP that's based on the 18th century. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but usually LARPs are more fantasy focused or science fiction, or maybe like film noir. And it's a game. They're trying to complete an objective, versus we're mostly trying to portray the past and educate people. They're pretty different to me, but I could see where somebody from the outside doesn't really make the distinction between the two.
Whatever floats your boat. I mean, if that's your fun. I mean, serious reenactors are trying to reenact a specific period or person in history and trying to be reasonably authentic while doing it. But, other people want to get the experience of feeling like someone from that age, the swashbuckling Viking or whatever. And I think that's, there's a little difference there in that, one, you're trying to portray something, and another, you're trying to be something. There's a little difference there, but they are somewhat related. You got to do the same thing if you want to, LARPer, I guess, would say, I need a sword. The reenactor would say, I need this specific sword.
It's pretty open-ended, right? It's whatever the person wants to do. So, sure, I guess you could call cosplay reenacting. You're reenacting something. I mean, when I was much younger, people would reenact Rocky Horror Picture Show in front of the movie. I would say they were reenacting the movie. Reenacting with this group is usually reenacting the Revolutionary War, or you'll hear about people doing the Civil War, American Civil War, I should say. There's also the Sealed Knot, which is an organization in the UK that does the English Civil War. And there are people that do reenacting of Napoleonic battles. I know several people that have actually traveled to Belgium and gone for the reenactment of Waterloo. And people that do War of 1812 reenacting. So I would say reenacting is pretty open to whatever you want it to be.
Although there are similarities, LARPing and reenacting are two entirely different worlds. However, interpreting is a close cousin to reenacting. Historical interpreters dress up in period clothes, and some will even speak in modern terms, explaining the ways of the past to the audiences of today.
I mean, a lot of reenactors are interpreting what they perceive the way it would have been. Of course, the older stuff you do, I mean, there are people that reenact the Vikings and all, and you don't have you're limited by the amount of information you have. So as every reenactor type group goes, the farther back you go in time, the less reliable information you have. There's a lot of people who reenact World War II now, and they actually have uniforms from World War II that they wear. Of course, you don't have that for Revolutionary War stuff. So you're wearing what you think is appropriate. But most of the information you have is paintings or articles. You know, people say they've been robbed and this is what was stolen, and so you have a list of clothing essentially. They're similar in a lot of ways. There's a lot of overlap. There are people that, you know, try to talk with the dialect and everything, but, you know, everybody has their own thing in this hobby.
I like to educate the public, so I like to be, in my person, I don't like to pretend to be somebody else, so people can ask questions, and it's just easier for me to do it as a storytelling rather than somebody from the actual time period.
It's less a first-person interpretation, but it's a third-person interpretation. And you were able to use that third-person interpretation to speak with members of the public on terms and in fashions that they themselves will relate to and understand.
Some interpreters, you know, will break into a modern persona, like to interact with people, and I usually think of interpreters as usually being paid. And most reenactors are people that do it as a hobby. That might be a gross simplification. Yeah, normally when I think of interpreter, it's like somebody that's working at a shop at like Williamsburg or at Old Sturbridge Village.
Oh, this battlefield is rife with inaccuracy. You dead people, stop playing cards. And Stonewall Jackson, stop rollerblading.
The South will boogie again.
This was supposed to be a mock battle! Mock!
Although you may have a hankering for history, not everyone is cut out to be a reenactor, as historical accuracy is an important part of the hobby. Reenactors are put into different categories depending on how accurate their clothes, weapons, and actions during reenactments are.
I feel that my hands get very dry sometimes, so I brought this. It's a
no.
Well, just can I hear me out? It's a cream that I get. What's nice is it's grapeseed oil.
No.
So it lubricates.
The term FARB, F-A-R-B, refers to reenactors that spend little time or money trying to be accurate. The origin of the term is disputed, although some say it stands for fast and researchless buying, or forget about research, baby. Mainstream reenactors take the time to appear authentic, but will come out of character or have modern devices for cooking or hygiene, while progressives or hardcore reenactors are looking for a more immersive experience.
It's very complicated, of course, to put all of this stuff together, but there are people out there who have done it all before, and they will help you to do so. So don't stress out about any of that stuff. And most importantly, actually, don't go buying things beforehand. No. Let them talk you through the process, because it's very particular items that you need for a lot of these impressions.
There are people that can go overboard a little bit as far as authenticity goes.
This is usually how a conversation with one of them would inevitably go. You know, I meet them, I go, hey, how's it going? I'm Andy. And they say, that button you got, that's not accurate. I go, oh okay. Oh, and by the way, the fringe on your coat, that's modern fringe. They wouldn't have used that. They wouldn't have sewed things like that back then.
Right now, I can't reenact in some places because I have a beard. So my choices is just shave off my beard or not participate. So I have elected not to participate in some stuff. But, you know, that's their thing. I mean, if that's what that floats their boat, go ahead and do it. I just don't want to play.
This is a replica of a artillery carbine. So when we're fielding with the Royal Artillery, they would actually have carbines slung so that if anyone got close enough, they could try to defend themselves with muskets.
I mean, a typical outfit, you would have a shirt and some wool trousers or breeches.
If you are looking to impress those who've been reenacting most of their lives, it'll take a bit more than an accurate-looking outfit. You're expected to live and behave like a person from the 1770s, or whatever time period you're trying to portray.
My leather helmet for the fourth, which is what we would wear if we were dressed as the fourth foot in 1775.
And for starters, it's not cheap.
How much would an outfit like that cost?
Oh, well, you're probably talking about $600-700. And that's cheap. I have a dress uniform from Lexington that has brass buttons and everything, and that's upward over $1,000.
So you can buy the musket online for about $1,300 with the bayonet. My British kit was probably for getting both 75 and 77 was probably about $2,000 when all was said and done.
The thing is, you don't need a big wardrobe. Some people do. I mean, I've seen reenactors who have a whole closet just full of this stuff because that's what they're into.
76 or 77 uniform, waistcoats. There's a couple of my old clothes, Royal Artillery coats, cleaning smock. So if you're cleaning the cannon, you don't want to get your uniform dirty. You put this on over the top.
They like, getting the different clothes, researching that. A lot of people do their own tailoring. They'll do their own sewing, and they enjoy doing that.
It can be all-consuming. So as we mentioned, to get your kit and have it authentic, it has to really be homemade. So you have to be prepared either to pay money for somebody else to home make it, or you have to improve your skills and get that going.
Yeah, there are times like when you're at 2 o'clock in the morning on Lexington Green and it's 34 degrees and driving rain. It's not the most awesome experience, but you're happy that you did it.
Although it takes a toll on your wallet, and researching might take some time, reenacting is a rewarding experience because of the sense of community and accomplishment it creates.
It can be a lot of fun. You meet a lot of interesting people, little unusual people, but you meet a lot of interesting people like that. You meet a lot of people who are totally off the wall too. That can be a downside.
I think a lot of it for me is the preservation of history and the friendships that I've made. I mean, initially you have the interest in history. That's usually what gets you involved, but then you make a lot of friends, and then it kind of becomes your social circle and your life. The same thing if you did bowling or fishing or any other hobby. I've done SCA before. It's, you keep coming back every weekend because of the people. Yeah, everyone finds something about the history referred to as material culture that you get interested in. Sometimes it's like the details of the uniforms or the stitching or patterns of fabric or lack thereof of patterns or the muskets or cannons. And so all of those things combined, and it helps that my partner and I both like to do this. So this is the thing that we do every weekend.
Though there's a lot of people you don't know, they all sort of share this sort of common set of values and respect for history and respect for each other that makes it a safe place for kids to be. So it was a really great place to have kids coming up. And so that really made it a lot of fun for us as parents, because here we're doing something that's really pretty fun and cool to be doing it as an adult, and the kids are really happy with it because it's really fun and cool to be doing it as a kid. So that was sort of where we got started, and the kids eventually sort of grew up, got jobs, headed out of town, and started doing their own thing, and we looked left and right and said, well, are we still doing this for the kids? We're like, no, this is actually really cool. This is part of our lives now, and we really enjoy it. The camaraderie, the sense of doing something hard with other people really brings you together and bonds you.
And I have immense respect for the individuals, the thousands and thousands of individuals across the country and the world who will spend exorbitant amounts of time and money and effort, blood, sweat, and tears to go around the country and the world to put on these massive displays, all explicitly because they have a passion that they want to help share with the world, help to show other people that, the past wasn't so simple or silly as oftentimes, movies and video games will make it all seem. It's an incredible sacrifice that these people commit, and that's, why I am also very, proud to be able to dedicate my life and my own career now through YouTube in so many ways to promoting this hobby and the individuals who make it all work.
And you never know who you might meet.
I look back at my whole reenacting career. It seems like kind of like a Forrest Gump existence. I mean, I've gotten to do things that I normally would never have gotten to do. I've met people that I probably would have never met. An example of that, during one of the Patriot games, it was an AFC championship, and we were down in the tunnel, a bunch of us all in our colonial clothes with our muskets standing there, and we're right outside a dressing room, and out of the door comes Ozzy Osbourne, and he looks at us and says, "Oh, am I in a war zone here?" And then he came over and he shook our hands, and we all, shook his hand, said, "Hi, how you doing?" And my friend next to me nudges me and said, "Who would have ever thought that our interest in colonial history would one day lead to shaking Ozzy Osbourne's hand?"
Although the initial steps to get involved might be intimidating, reenacting is a hobby that has stood the test of time.
I'm from Vermont. If I skied, I'd be spending thousands of dollars for skis and boots and clothing and equipment and ski passes. If I was into photography, how much do your cameras cost, right? So, every hobby has its expenses. This one can be, but it's a lot of fun because you make a lot of your own equipment, so you learn to sew. I've learned to sew. I got back into learning how to type doing newsletters for the unit. So, it extends well beyond just sitting here around a campfire eating and shooting guns. So that's kind of why I do it. It's the friendship, it's fun. The evenings are a ball around the campfires.
For some, reenacting creates a sense of pride.
A pride in you help to honor a memory in the past. You're sort of directing and elevating the pride of the past. In wearing the uniform, in sharing with people the history, the times, the tribulations, the privations, the struggles of the men who wore those uniforms, I wish to elevate, their pride, so to say, their honor, their sacrifice, etc., etc. It's all about, yes, I suppose, directing greater attention to the past and an interest, a fascination with that history.
Whatever it is that draws them to it, reenactors love sharing their knowledge of history, as well as educating others on how to be accurate to the time period they're portraying. My name is Chris Woolf. I'm the history guy for the BBC programme The World on public radio. I co-founded the reenacted 4th, or King's Own Regiment, back in 2000. The 4th fought for King George at Lexington and Concord, and in many of the other major battles of the Revolutionary War. I also took a contingent to Belgium in 2015 for the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo. I'm also a veteran of the real British Army. I'm now largely retired from the hobby, but to me, reenacting was a fun way to recapture the best parts of military life, especially the camaraderie, without the risk or the real hardship.
sound.